Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you so much for joining the Pivotal College team, Pivotal College Years team for Talking College before, during, and after. My name is Kathleen Dion. I'm with Pivotal College Years. On the line with us, we have Tom O'Hare with Get College Going and Shelley Honeycutt with College Advisors NE. So today we're going to talk about everything from students who are about to go to college, students who are in college or maybe trying to desperately get there, or maybe come home, depending on your situation. And for those of you who are about to graduate or recently graduated. So I guess just let's get into it because we've been about a half an hour together with each other. So should we start with current students? I'm sure you all saw in the news, colleges like Northeastern have asked some students to go home for breaking the rules. They're all working very hard to make the campus safe and COVID-free, and they've developed pretty stringent guidelines, and some of the students just aren't following the rules. So I wanted to kick that out there first to you all. I guess my first question would be, are you dealing with any students or clients who have had this experience, and how are they dealing with it?
We are dealing
Ellie?
with students. Yeah, we are dealing with students that are being sent home, not being given the information for starting up quick enough. Northeastern, let's just make a correction. They're not only being sent home, they're being sent home without their refund.
Yeah, they're being sent home permanently.
Mm-hmm. And that
expelled.
Right, and those were the students that were getting ready to launch for their study abroad program, which is funded solely by cash or private student loans, not federal monies. And they're not adhering to the typical refund policy that Northeastern usually has, because if they did, those students would be due 100% refund. So that's a very expensive party. Right?
Yes, right.
Absolutely.
I'm not dealing with anyone that's come home yet. I'm dealing with a lot of students who are in the hybrid environment where they're almost like our vocational technical schools here in Massachusetts. They're studying. One student I have is studying for a week in her room, and she's in a class for the second week, and she's alternating. Others are definitely doing the 2 days on, 2 days off type of environment. So there's a lot of stress with those students.
Absolutely.
Well, that's what I was, have you gotten feedback from students who are on campus experiencing education in this model, and how is that going for them?
I have from Salve Regina. My niece is there, and it's been interesting. They did have one case, but that student has been isolated. They're not even sending them home, and they're doing some hybrid courses from the classroom, but they are also attending class. So she's really excited about that, and they put them in shared spaces, but they have their own bedrooms. The upperclassmen have been moved to a hotel nearby. So it's working out so far with them. They are a small school, and they did give it a lot of thought ahead of time. So I got to give Salve Regina some credit on that. Excellent. And then we have dealt with James Madison. They had a breakout, and so they sent those kids home from campus for 4 weeks, told them to leave their stuff in the dorm room, and then they might be able to come back. So one of my students said, no, the parents had just dropped him off, went back, got the dorm room stuff, and on the ride home, he was like, had an epiphany. I don't want to keep going through this back and forth. So deferred for 12 months and trying to figure it out now. So it's not right now, it's most students aren't even able to get into a few like gen ed courses at home at a local community college because most have already started. So that's posing problems. And then we did have a student connected with the NYU Singapore program, whereas they let those students know last minute that they would not be heading off to Singapore. A very few day notice, And then they switched it and said, you'll be studying from home and you'll be studying on Singapore time. And guess what? You're still paying 70 grand a year.
Yeah.
So to me, that's not very fair or straightforward. So I think transparency is something they need to think long and hard about, these colleges.
Right. There is some concern about the students coming home. If they are sick and coming home, they're bringing it back into their community. So that's been written. I read about that today in a couple different periodicals. But the students I've been working with, they're dealing with the single rooms. They're dealing with some isolation issues. I'm talking to their parents about making sure that they stay in contact with the students. But for the most part, they're persevering. I'm not sure about high school seniors and juniors right now. They're going through the same process too.
I've had some interaction with a student, high school senior, who decided because of all the upheaval from junior year, she just switched to dual enrollment online with a local community college for senior year because she felt like she would get a better education and that they're more familiar with the online process. And for her, I think it is a good idea.
Yeah, I think the reality is that every answer is a little bit different depending on where your student is at and what they're capable of and their level at this point in time. I think at the end of the day, the students overall are just happy to have interactions. They are excited about the possibility that it might work. So I feel like a lot of them are giving it a go. But it's a matter of how it's being handled on campus and whether or not they can stay in a safe environment if that'll work out for in person. So it'll be interesting. For those who are making last minute changes, I think we should talk about how they move forward from there. So if you are working with a student or you have a student that has decided, you know, at the last minute, this just isn't for me, you know, what is your plan from here? I think it's important to know that, I mean, fall is probably started everywhere or most places, but we can look forward to spring for some students. So it certainly is a possibility if you have a list of schools that you know you're interested in, maybe that you didn't apply to before, you could apply now. You could also start having conversations with colleges maybe that you've already applied to or, you know, possibly been accepted to. There's, you know, you've already put in a lot of work there, and if you've already gotten a yes, maybe you can coordinate a new start date. So I feel like as a parent or someone that's helping a student that through this process, if they don't start for fall, don't feel like it's over. There's definitely a next step and a way to get started, maybe sooner than you think.
Yeah, as I shared with you this morning, Kathleen, the piece from one school down in the south where they're now promoting spring enrollment. So they know that students are contemplating what to do right now in the fall. So they're trying to advance the conversation to the spring, which is, I think, very valid. We've got some students that I've been working with that are going to go into some apprenticeships for the fall, get involved and you know, take a step back, so to speak. But your point's well taken about getting ready and keeping the plan going, especially if they're already enrolled. Schools are pivoting just as much as the students are pivoting.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Have you seen, I've seen a few more schools opening up to offering on-campus tours and information sessions. So even though they're getting back up and running with their incoming class and their returning students, there are many that are trying to get the juniors and seniors to come and visit in some very controlled environments, some very controlled small group tours. So that's a very promising move forward on behalf of the colleges.
Yeah, I think it is. It's encouraging. However, I've been cautioning my families not to book tours that are significantly far away from home because they could be canceled at the last minute, and the money and the effort and once again, the additional disappointment, I think, wouldn't be good. So to book schools that are really close by within an hour's drive or something like that, and test the waters that way first.
Yeah, even if they don't have a tour or an information session, you can do a drive-by, stop on campus, walk around. If you meet someone, always have a notebook and a pen in your pocket so you can write people's names and telephone numbers down so that you can communicate with them when you go back home. I have a student that did that 2 Sundays ago and down at Providence College, and met one of the friars, and the friar took him for a walk around. And they've been communicating since, so it has some very strong promise as far as I'm concerned.
That's neat. That's really interesting. Quinnipiac is allowing you to do drive-throughs, kind of like the zoo, which I thought was interesting too, right? So, and many times you can just, if you have your cell phone on you, many times there's some like apps that you can get some walking towards. So you'll be on campus, maybe just have the app going, and it could be a better experience than not having it.
Definitely be
so absolutely a combination. Yeah, and it's a combination. If you're doing an online fair and you get to interface with admissions and ask your questions, in addition to be able to get on campus, even if it's a little bit of a limited situation, it can still help you make a choice ultimately in the end.
I've also noticed many of the schools doing group interviews. So
Yes.
Kathleen, give us some pointers on group interviews, because I'm like, well, that's a little interesting, right?
Yeah, I mean, and they're group Zoom interviews that they're doing, which is even harder, I think, to navigate, especially maybe as someone that's newer to interviewing. I think the most important piece of advice that I can give you is to practice and truly treat that Zoom interview a little bit like a TV show. I always counsel companies now like to do pre-recorded interviews. You have to do a little production. Right, you have to pick the right outfit, you have to pick the right wall, you have to be in a room where your dog's not going to run through. I mean, granted, if it happens, you know, it happens and you politely apologize and move forward, don't dwell on it. But I really do believe that practice is key, and if you could actually get a group together on Zoom or whatever the tool is they're using to practice interacting with each other, especially us New Englanders, because I've lived in many different parts of the country. You don't want to be seen as someone that's maybe always stepping on someone. There's a little bit of lag time between maybe when the person stopped speaking on the video and when the voice actually ends on the audio. So you got to work a little bit on the timing.
Oh, that's great advice.
Good point.
Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah, and then practice your questions. You know, why are you a good candidate for this program? Why are you interested in that school? You need to be able to give specific reasons that are relevant to only you, not just the information that's on the front page of the website. So practice goes a long way.
One of our graduate students mentioned a question that I thought was interesting. She said it took her by surprise. If for somebody who doesn't like you, what do you think they would say about you?
Oh, interesting. They took the negative path on that one. I've heard that from the positive way, where they ask if your friend were to describe you in 3 words, what would they say? Or if your boss was to describe you, they put you in someone else's head. So they usually get a little bit more honest answer. But they took the negative path. So there's, you know, behavioral questions that are out there. And Shelley, you actually shared a great video with me that I'll be posting to the portal momentarily, that will help people in their job searches as well. You can translate that information to admissions.
Well, I'm a strong proponent of everybody communicating as much as possible with schools because of the lack of contact they're having with their student population. So you're right, practice, and if you can get an interview, whether it's with a group or it's definitely one-on-one, a virtual, you know, through whatever the medium is, strongly suggest that you do it, because schools unfortunately don't know you're existing out there.
Yeah, which also brings up the point, when you do get an interview, ask the format, ask, you know, is it a group or is it a one-on-one? Who will I be meeting with? If they're putting you together as a group, they might end up having 3 people from, you know, the engineering and design department also interviewing all engineering and design students that want to come in. So it's definitely fair to ask a few questions to see the lay of the land, so you're a little more comfortable when you first walk into that situation virtually.
This happened to be at American University, and they had the format right there, and it was for that specific admissions counselor for that territory. So it was kind of helpful, but it was booked out. You couldn't get a group interview until October.
Wow.
Yeah. So
which people are taking Tom's advice. Interview,
Yeah.
interview.
Yeah, I mean, I'm working with students to develop a very polite, a very junior senior style communication plan that once you get it to know a person in the school, just like we do in the business world, networking. And you know, schools have been saying they've been loving to use texting for all these years, and they're still lagging behind a little bit in using texting and emailing. So there is some practice that needs to be part of that, but you got to get to know. Students have got to get to know the schools, and the schools have got to get to know you, even more so in today's environment, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, agreed.
You know, and I do want to mention we have we have people that have joined us. So those of you who have joined us, if you have some questions, if you have some comments or thoughts that want to share with us, please use the chat box. We're monitoring it to answer your questions. So don't be shy. We're here to provide some information, but more importantly, we want to hear what your questions might be or some of your anxieties, and we'll be happy to answer those too. So drop them in the chat box.
Thanks for that,
Excellent.
Tom.
And since we're on the topic of people who are trying to get into college, you know, juniors and seniors looking forward to going into school, what other details have you noticed that may have changed now in this new, you know, admissions world? Testing, you know, just admissions in general, some of the processes. What are you guys noticing? Any tips, any advice?
Shelley?
Testing has been frustrating for the students because it's such the great unknown, and it's always the anxiety provoker, right, in preparing for it. And then they start to prepare for a test, and then it gets canceled, and then they do it again, and then they're seeming to give up. So I keep encouraging our students to act as if it's going to happen. But what I've found is that if you could book your next SATs at a private high school near you in your state, that's probably the best chance of getting an SAT that will run. So there is one coming up September 26th. Many of the slots are closed down, the schools are closed down, but if you can look for a private high school near you, you might get a better shot. And then you have the following month, October 3rd, I think it is. If you can't find that, book it out into November and December, because even if you submit your applications early, you'll be able to indicate on the Common App that that test is coming. And then if it's a good test, it's some information, like Tom says, you can communicate with admissions with and kind of say, hey, got my new test, this is what it is, and start up another conversation.
Yeah, I'm finding a lot of people that are buying into the test optional movement, but at the same time are very, very skittish, scared, uneasy, and feeling compelled to take the test, try to take the test, which with the sites and opportunities, you know, being so uncertain, is just adding to that great stress. But like you, I'm encouraging people to sign up, take the test, like you said, book it out there as far as in advance. I like the idea of the private schools. I'm curious why the private schools are hosting them more than the public schools.
Well, I don't mean they're hosting them more. I mean that they're running. Those are the ones that the kids were, the test wasn't canceled. So Moses Brown in Rhode Island, Portsmouth Abbey in Rhode Island. So there are some schools where the public schools canceled the SAT in August, but these schools didn't.
Yeah. What have you been hearing, if anything, about the online? Has the online pretty much gone away?
Online what? Online
The online
testing?
test, take it at home?
I don't know any new information on that. Given what happened with the AP exams, I would suspect highly that they shouldn't bring it up just out of a PR nightmare.
Yeah.
You know, so I would say no, I don't think that that is a excellent idea for them at all.
Yeah. So the bottom line is
Yeah.
really for schools, for students and parents to be contacting individual schools, really get some definitive answers from the schools on what they're doing, if they're test optional. Ask the question, how are you going to evaluate me based on my high school resume? Is it going to be my GPA, my rank, my essay, my recommendations? I think we all know schools are a little leery about sometimes giving definitive, transparent information, but I would encourage students and parents to definitely push the envelope a little bit and
Well,
ask questions.
I would tell you on the Common App, there's a nice little sneaky way to see what the policy is. If you add the school to the list
Yep.
of the Common App, you can go in, and a lot of them are being pretty descriptive, or they'll link you to their new policy. So that's another good way to take a look at it. Especially if you're an engineering student, nursing student, computer science student. One of the majors or special programs like direct entry med programs, direct entry PA programs, PT, OT, where they rely heavily on those exams, I would be looking at the specific program, not just that, and contacting that department, not just relying on the school policy.
Good point. Good point.
So just in
Absolutely.
case.
All right, excellent. And I wanted to circle back just because of the timing. And there are so many plans changing for fall. So again, if you're working with a student where their plan has been hijacked in some way, shape, or form, and they're coming up with a brand new one, I did want to let everybody know the ship has not sailed for financial aid. The ship has not sailed for college funding. I know, a lot of seniors are looking forward to October 1st when the new FAFSA will be available when they're starting in the 21 fall term. But if you're someone that their plan has changed for this fall or this spring, that FAFSA is still available. FAFSA.ed.gov, you can still fill it out. You still have access to federal loans. You still may have access to institutional funds, depending on where that money has gone, if any has come back. So start with the FAFSA if you're a family that is working through some changes and needs funding for this academic year. I didn't want this program to go without saying that out loud, because it is so important. And that's not always the best message that you get when with financial aid departments. They deal with a lot of students. You might not be able to get someone on the line to actually tell you that. It might not be on their website or not in an easily accessible place, but it is still absolutely available. And if you need assistance with this, this information is in the portal, and there's lots of tools out there, but it's not
I had
too
to
late.
call into the University of California system today call into their financial aid office. And they are still, I can't even imagine it. They are still, the message is still saying, oh, the financial aid office is working remotely, leave a message. So getting help and support from the college might be a little difficult. So you might want to try email. But Kathleen, you're right on. You can use the FAFSA and file it and get aid and reimburse yourself if you have to, because I've had several of those calls this week by filing the FAFSA and then at least getting your federal loan up until the last day of class.
Yeah, and for parents who rely on for parents who are not checking with their students who are already on campus or doing hybrid, remember 99% of the time, the emails are going to the students from the financial aid office, not to the parents. So they may be unfortunately sitting on it. I had a case this week where a mother called me wondering why her daughter didn't get her sophomore year direct student loan. Well, come to find out, the FAFSA was started by the students. Students stopped, didn't tell anybody else. School's been extremely busy. They're not following up to find
Right.
out who or who hasn't filed it. And lo and behold, it wasn't completed. So quickly it got completed, and now the student's in the mix to get their sophomore student loan. You know, so it's check the checklist twice, and especially ask the student who's getting the emails.
Absolutely, and that's a very good point. I think we forget about that part. The student even gets the bill these days, right? And especially for an undergrad student, it's the village that's paying, not just the student. So
There you go.
for the
I
most
like the village.
takes a village.
That village wasn't around when my kids.
All right, and we have just a few minutes left, but for the students who are about to graduate, Tom and I were speaking about this morning. We wanted to let everybody know that Career Services Department seem to be up and running, whether they are in person or virtual. They are there, and they are putting together virtual career fairs. I know the university that I used to work at, I'm still on their feed, and I see all the virtual job fairs that they're running. Companies are hiring. If you are a student that needs part-time work while you're in school, or if you're someone that's looking forward to a job after graduation or an internship, now is the time. And given the scenario that's going on campus, people might not be on campus all the time. It might be harder to get in touch with them. However, this virtual world might make it easier to get in touch with somebody. Right. Either way, start now. I always felt bad for the person who was a great candidate and showed up 3 days before the job fair, and they needed their resume done, and they needed to do their research, and they had to have their parents overnight their suit if it was in person. And I would still recommend wearing the suit even if you're locked in your dorm room. Play the part, the role you want, dress for the job you want, not the one you have. So we wanted to make you aware that these things are going on. Virtual job fairs are being held, and you absolutely should be participating in them as someone that is about to graduate. Even as an incoming freshman, they are great events to attend. You start to make contacts, you start to gather information, and when you are ready for that internship as a junior, for instance, wouldn't it be so much better to speak to John at the Hyatt and say, hey, John, it's great to see you again. We've spoken for the last 3 years and now I'm ready. Rather than, John, it's nice to meet you for the very first time and you know nothing about me. So start to use these moments in time. Don't use it as an excuse. The events are still happening and opportunities are definitely still out there.
Kathleen, you have some great modules that you have built and contributed to the portal here in front of everyone. So for the viewers' benefit, maybe you could take us through a little bit about Pivotal College Years and what somebody in that situation might be able to find.
Yeah, so I think first and foremost, most of you on here probably know that Pivotal College Years is an online college planning portal, but it goes way beyond that. It is before, during, and after. So if you're someone looking to go to school, if you're currently in school, looking for funding, financial aid, transfer, moving on to grad school advice, or after the fact where you're getting on finding that job, it is here. So I'm on the page now that you can probably see, and you can gain free access. I would have to log in for this. Hang on one moment.
Oh, you don't have to log in. I just wanted you to kind of give them an idea of what's available as far as there's some great videos, and they're short, and as well as some downloadables for students that are in that phase.
Absolutely, and all the phases. We were very thoughtful in trying to present information in different ways. So whenever we could do a video, we did. There's downloadable content that you can print up and take on the go and maybe help manage your process, whatever process you're in. And then, just some deep dive. 5 links later, I've read for, you know, for an hour and a half, and I need to go take a break. Whatever point you're at, there's a lot of information available, but the great thing is it's all in one place rather than hunting a million different websites. And I think Tom is the one that does the Google search from time to time, and he came up with what, 44 million last time? Something crazy like that.
466 million on Tuesday when you just query the word admissions. So
Excellent.
and it doesn't
Admissions,
include,
and that's only admissions.
well, that's
Right.
college admissions. It's not senior living. But yeah, the whole notion of so many different sites to navigate and maneuver. We're proud of what we're trying to do with Pivotal College Years and presenting information to folks and to students, as well as educators. I mean, if we have high school guidance departments that are looking
Right.
for a resource to make available to their students, Pivotal College Years is definitely there. And as we're promoting it, it's free until the end of the year.
Excellent.
Excellent. And that rounds us out. We are at 4:31, so that is our half hour of talking college before, during, and after. Shelley and Tom, thank you so much for being part of this, and we will see you next month on Wednesday, October 14th at 4 o'clock. We hope to see
Sounds
you then.
great. Thank
Great.
you.